Tonight on First at 9, this Monday the 2nd of September 2024. Within limits. Presidential candidates who breach election expenditure regulations will be disqualified from the election and lose civil liberties, warns the Election Commission. Vision 2025. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna presidential candidate Namal Rajapaksa unveils his election manifesto. Vows to increase national GDP to $180 billion within a decade. Future plans. Samagi Jana Balawege to issue the blueprint for economic stabilization soon. National People's Power vows to reduce electricity tariffs by 35% after winning the election. Connectivity. India's budget carrier Indigo commences daily direct flights to Jaffna.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Sri Lanka's premier primetime English news bulletin, Derana First at 9. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. The Election Commission today handed over the official polling cards for the 2024 presidential election to the Postal Department. Accordingly, registered voters will receive their polling cards to be presented at the polling stations starting from tomorrow until the 14th of this month. Meanwhile, Commissioner General of Elections Saman Sri Ratnayaka emphasized that presidential candidates found to have breached election expenditure regulations will be subject to harsh penalties, including disqualification from the election and loss of civil liberties. The official polling cards for the 2024 presidential election were handed over to the Postal Department today. Subsequently, the Postal Department will commence delivering the polling cards to the residences of registered voters tomorrow.
Distribution of official polling cards will continue until the 14th of September. Additionally, Sunday, the 8th of September, has been designated as a special day for delivering polling cards. I request voters who did not receive their polling cards before the 8th to remain at home and collect their polling cards on that day.
Meanwhile, the reserved packets containing the postal ballots for the election are currently being delivered to the designated postal voting centres. Postal voting for the 2024 presidential election is scheduled to take place on the 4th, 5th and 6th of September.
On the 4th of September, postal voting will be conducted at district secretariats, offices of the Election Commission and police stations. On the 5th and 6th of September, postal voting will be conducted at all other government institutions, schools and the offices of other security forces. Postal voters who are unable to cast their votes on these days can do so at the district secretariat of the district in which their workplace is located on the 11th and 12th of September.
In the meantime, Commissioner General of Elections Saman Sri Ratnayaka emphasized that any presidential candidate found to have exceeded the legally permitted spending limit per voter or submitted falsified income and expenditure reports will face severe consequences.
Within 21 days of the conclusion of the election, candidates must submit a report of their income and expenditure to the Election Commission. If they fail to comply, legal actions will be taken and they will be disqualified from the election. After the reports have been submitted, we will publish them in a newspaper advertisement. This year, we have also planned to publish them on our website as well. Afterwards, if the reports are found to contain any falsified information, a complaint will be filed before the police, who will then initiate legal proceedings against the relevant candidate. If falsified information has been submitted, the relevant candidate will be disqualified from the election and their civil liberties will be revoked for a period of 3 years.
Horizon Campus 2024 Intake 2. Register now.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
President Ranil Wickremesinghe affirms that he is contesting the presidential election to protect Sri Lanka's hard-won stability and to ensure its continued development, not for personal gain. The head of state called on all Sri Lankans to unite and join him in developing Sri Lanka from the grassroots level. The 73rd anniversary celebration of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party was held in Sri Jayawardhanapura Kotte this evening under the theme Victory for the Country, Together for the Future. The ceremony was graced by President Ranil Wickremesinghe, representatives of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, representatives of the New Alliance and representatives of the United National Party.
I saw that a certain party has pledged to provide 50 kilograms of fertilizer for 5,000 rupees. The price of a 50 kilogram of fertilizer currently stands at 4,000 rupees. We will distribute this fertilizer to farmers from next month onwards. Not only that, onwards from next season, measures will be in place to provide Bandi fertilizer for the farmers for free.
We accept both positive and negative comments. Unlike others, we haven't forgotten the past. What would have happened if we did not unite? Would the people be able to live the lives the way they are living now? How many parliamentarians would be alive? Not only did we save our country, but we also safeguarded democracy. That is why we are able to hold the presidential election. I am contesting this year's election to protect Sri Lanka's stability and to develop the country. Let's unite to develop this country from the grassroots level. Let's put aside political differences and unite for the betterment of rural Sri Lanka. There are no gas or fuel queues at present. However, I will make sure that on the 21st of September, people will stand in queues to vote for a leader capable of developing the country.
September 21 වෙනිදා ඡන්ද පොළට යන පොලිමත් ඇති කරනවා. මිනිස්සුගේ ඉඩ දෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒක නවත්තා.
Meanwhile, Samagi Jana Balawega-led alliance's presidential candidate, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, pledges to recommence the Gammudava program for people without land ownership if elected to the office of president. Addressing a rally in Mullaitivu, Premadasa also promised to implement a program to uplift the livelihoods of Sri Lanka's women-led households if elected to office.
An election rally in support of the Samagi Jana Balawega-led alliance's presidential candidate, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, was held in Mullaitivu earlier today.
If there are any supporters of the United National Party here, I advise you not to waste your vote on them. A strong team has been formed under the leadership of Sajith Premadasa. That is why I re-entered politics after 4 years and came onto this stage. If we make the wrong decision on 21st of September, there will not be a country left, not only for you, but for the future generations.
විශේෂ ජීවනෝපාය වැඩසටහනක්.
We will introduce a special program to strengthen the livelihoods of women-led households. Thousands of housing projects that we initiated were halted by former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. When Ranil Wickremesinghe assumed office, he continued down the same path by refusing to allocate funds for these projects. When we achieve victory on the 21st of September, not only will we allocate funds to complete these housing projects, but we will also recommence the era of Gammudava for people without land ownership.
නිවාස නොමැති රටේම ජනතාව වෙනුවෙන් අපි ගම්මුදා යුගය නැවතත් වරක් ආරම්භ කරනවා කියන එක මම ඔබ සියලු දෙනාටම ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
Meanwhile, former parliamentarian of the Kilinochchi district, Murugesu Chandrakumar, met opposition leader Sajith Premadasa today and pledged his support for SJB-led alliance's presidential candidate for the upcoming presidential election.
Meanwhile, presidential candidate of the National People's Power, Anurakumara Dissanayake, asserts that no campaign launched by either Ranil Wickremesinghe or Sajith Premadasa to defame the NPP is capable of preventing his victory at the presidential election. Dissanayake also expressed his conviction that the majority of Sri Lankans have already decided to elect him to the office of president at the forthcoming polls.
Another public rally pledging support to the leader and presidential candidate of the National People's Power, Andrakumara Dissanayaka, was held in Homagama last evening.
දැන් මොකද්ද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ මේ පොට්ටු එක එක තැන් වලට කැඩිලා රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ පැත්තේ හිටියොත් වන්දුලක් තිනවා රනිල් එක්ක දිනේෂ් ගුණවර්ධනක් තිනවා රනිල් එක්ක.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, which splintered in several camps, collapsed. Parliamentarians such as Dr. Bandula Gunawardana, Dinesh Gunawardana, Mahindananda Alutgamage and Rohit Abegunawardana are with Ranil Wickramasinghe. On the other hand, GL Piris, Nalaka Godaheva and Dallas Alaha Peruma have sided with Sajith Premadasa. There are a number of SLPP members who are supporting Namal Rajapaksa as well. Arjuna Rantunga often said that people such as Thilanga Sumathipala should be removed from their position in order to protect Sri Lanka cricket. In return, Thilanga Sumathipala claimed that Ranatunga is a jealous leader who doesn't want Sri Lanka to win in a cricket World Cup again. However, both of them were seen together at one of Sajith Premadasa's election rallies. Not only that, Patili Champika Ranawaka and Rishad Batyuddin were seen together at another rally of Premadasa. What type of politics is this? From the beginning of their election campaign, they criticized the National People's Power. However, they never imagined that a situation such as this would arise. There's a conflict between Ranil Wickramasinghe and Sajith Premadasa. However, amid the support received by the NPP, some members of their camps are discussing the possibility of uniting in order to defeat the NPP. However, it is too late to do so now. The people of this country vote for the NPP. In my opinion, no gambit played by Ranil Wickramasinghe or Sajith Premadasa is capable of preventing our victory.
Presidential candidate of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Namal Rajapaksa, pledges to increase Sri Lanka's per capita GDP to over $8,000 within the next decade and raise the national gross domestic product to $180 billion if elected to the office of president. Namal Rajapaksa made these promises while unveiling his election manifesto for the upcoming presidential poll. Addressing the manifesto unveiling ceremony in Colombo earlier today, he also vowed to eliminate corruption from Sri Lankan politics within 3 years if elected to office. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna presidential candidate Namal Rajapaksa's election manifesto, themed A Developed Country for You under the Namal Vision, was unveiled in Colombo this morning. Former Presidents Mahinda Rajapaksa and Gotabaya Rajapaksa were in attendance at the ceremony. The manifesto is structured into state priorities, modernization, investment and freedom. Namal Rajapaksa has committed to reducing the overall tax burden on the public, particularly focused on value-added and pay-as-you-earn taxes. He also plans to implement a simplified tax system for income tax. To offset the revenue loss from tax reductions, Rajapaksa suggests addressing inefficiencies within the Inland Revenue, Customs and Excise departments. He also plans to reinstate the Samurdhi welfare program to support low-income families. Additionally, the introduction of a permanent fertilizer subsidy program for farmers to boost productivity in the agriculture sector is also pledged. To attract foreign direct investments, a special visa scheme for investors contributing over $250 billion is proposed. Aiming to increase annual tourist arrivals to 5 million within the next decade, Rajapaksa also promises to enhance facilities at Katunayaka and Mattala international airports for budget airlines. With the goal of achieving a $180 billion GDP within the next decade, Rajapaksa is committed to raising per capita GDP to over $8,000, targeting an economic growth rate of 7%. Furthermore, he has rejected the privatization of state-owned enterprises and promises to establish an industrial executive committee to reform SOEs with the support of the local private sector.
We have the responsibility of transforming our country into a developed nation. We have the capacity to achieve this goal. We should move forward with target-based programs. I believe that by digitalizing government services, we can eliminate the era of long queues. I am committed to eradicating corruption and fraud in politics within the next 3 years. We are building a government for the new generation, a government that will transform Sri Lanka into a developed developed nation in Asia.
සංවර්ධ දේශය බවට පරිවර්තනය කරනවා.
Presidential candidate of Sarva Jana Balaya, Dilith Jayavira, asserts that none of the three leading presidential candidates are willing or capable of defending Sri Lanka's war veterans against international scrutiny. Addressing an event in Colombo, Jayavira affirmed that he both respects the country's veterans and is willing to protect them from any mistreatment.
Api Venuwen Api, an event held to advocate for Sri Lankan war veterans, was held in Colombo yesterday under the patronage of Sarva Jana Balaya presidential candidate Dilith Jayavira. During the event, a letter containing proposals from war veterans was presented to Dilith Jayavira.
මෙවැනි දුෂ්ට පනත් දුෂ්ට උත්සාහයන් රාජ්‍ය දුර්වල වූ හැම අවස්ථාවකදීම ඉදිරියට එනවා. ඒ පරාජය කරන්නට
When a state weakens, such cruel bills can emerge. When we ask the public to stop these bills, many do not believe that such bills could be even drafted. However, there are attempts to sacrifice our war veterans. Some governments have betrayed our war veterans in the most cruel manner. Hundreds of our police officers died as a result of these betrayals. The three mainstream candidates were parliamentarians during the Civil War. These candidates were part of anti-war camp. They lacked the courage to speak up for our war veterans. If their main manifesto include plans to sacrifice our war veterans, which veteran would read them and vote for these terrible leaders? If you want a leader that respects Sri Lanka's war veterans, I urge you to vote for me.
තරුව වෙනුවෙන් නම් ඔබ කටයුතු කරන්නේ මෙන්න තියෙනවා තරුව ගහන්න තරුව ඉදිරියේ කතිරේ.
National People's Power member Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa says that an NPP government will reduce the electricity tariff by over 30% within 6 months, contingent on winning the upcoming election. With that, let's take a look at more of the latest developments in the political front ahead of the presidential polls.
With the good news of a definite victory, the ITAC has also officially announced their support for us. The UNP was attempting to show that the Tamil and Muslim communities supported them. However, when the leaders of the estate, Tamil and Muslim communities pledged their support for Sajith Premadasa, Ranil Wickremesinghe sought to gain small fractions of that support for himself. However, when the leaders of the estate, Tamil and Muslim communities pledged their support to Sajith Premadasa, Ranil Wickremesinghe sought to gain small fractions of that support for himself.
Let us not forget what happened to Maldives and Bangladesh when they elected the wrong candidates. Due to the poor decisions made by Maldivian leaders, their foreign reserves have been depleted. They no longer have sufficient funds for basic needs, leaving the citizens of the Maldives demoralized.
අපි ඉදිරිපත් කරන අපේ බ්ලූප්‍රින්ට් එක කිසිම දේශපාලන පක්ෂයකට ඒ වාගේ වැඩපිළිවෙලක් නැහැ. හරි? අපේ පිටු 60 තියෙනවා ආර්ථිකය කර යුතු සියලුම දේ. කොහොමද අපි මේ ආර්ථිකය ගොඩ ගන්න? මොනවද අපි දෙන මේ දිරිගැන්වීම? අපි ඔබට කියන්නේ කරන්න පුළුවන් දේවල්.
We focus on practical solutions that we can implement. Others are proposing impractical ideas, likely because they are expected to lose. We clearly state what an NPP government will achieve within the first 6 months after being elected. We will immediately reduce the electricity tariff by 33 to 35%, and this is a definite commitment.
If we deviate from the IMF program, all other creditor nations will withdraw from agreements and will pressure us to repay the debt. It will not be easy. Within 6 years, struggles and anti-struggle movements will likely emerge. The army might take over, lives could be lost, and the country could fall into a much deeper crisis than before.
A short break now, and we'll be back with the latest in the world of business.
Star dishwasher Dali Tel Indul Pahasuwen Sede. Star dishwasher magic top එක.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
චන්දරුසුමේ කාගෙන් මන අපේ සිංහ TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Welcome back. India's budget carrier Indigo commenced daily direct operations to Jaffna from yesterday, which is its second destination in Sri Lanka after Colombo. This marks the 34th international and 122nd overall destination in the airline's rapidly expanding 6E network. Indigo stated that this strategic route will strengthen the cultural and trade ties between India and Sri Lanka that have been marked by cooperation in the fields of commerce, infrastructure development and air connectivity. The Chennai-Jaffna daily flight will depart at 1:55 p.m. with a scheduled arrival at 3:10 p.m. The Jaffna-Chennai daily flight will take off at 3:55 p.m. and is scheduled to arrive at 5:10 p.m. Indigo added that its new direct flight will provide a timely boost to this resurgence, offering seamless connectivity and tapping into a key market for Sri Lanka's tourism revival. The Colombo bourse closed in red today as a result of price losses in counters such as Commercial Bank, LOLC Holdings and Hatton National Bank, with the turnover crossing 615 million rupees. The CSE All Share Price Index settled 1.38% lower at 10,719.50 points, while the S&P Sri Lanka 20 ended in red 1.69% at 3,006.93 points. Swadeshi Industrial Works PLC and Nuvareli Hotels Company PLC were the top losers on the index, down 12% and 2% respectively. High net worth and institutional investor participation was noted in Haley Ceylon Grain Elevators and Hatton National Bank. Mixed interest was observed in John Keel's Holdings, Commercial Bank and Sampath Bank. Capital goods sector was the top contributor to the market turnover, while the banking sector was the second highest contributor. Trading volume on the index fell to 30.4 million shares from 86.7 million in the previous session. Foreign investors were net sellers, offloading stocks worth 34.7 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 602.9 million rupees. And up next, we have Kavya Senadira from Capital Alliance with a few thoughts to round off our Markets in View segment for the week.
Last week, the ASVI decreased notably by 4.34% from 11,362 to 10,869. While the S&P SL20 also declined by 6.01% to close at 3,059, the decrease stemmed from uncertainty surrounding the elections. Market turnover increased by 14% to around 3.6 billion rupees from 3.1 billion rupees. In local developments, the construction PMI for July stood at 62.9. External sector data showed an increase in both exports and imports during the month of July 2024, with an overall balance reported at USD 1,823.1 million.
And with that, let's take a look at the rupee exchange rate for the day. In corporate news, Sri Lanka's Securities and Exchange Commission, in a move to strengthen its market surveillance role, has acquired a market surveillance system from Nasdaq. The system will undergo testing and is expected to be fully operational within 5 months. With that, let's take a look at more corporate news in brief.
Fitch Ratings has assigned DFCC Bank PLC's proposed Sri Lankan rupee-denominated senior unsecured listed green bonds of up to 2.5 billion rupees an expected national long-term rating of A-. The green bond is rated at the same level as DFCC's national long-term rating, as it constitutes a direct, unconditional, unsubordinated and unsecured obligation of the bank. This would be the first listed green bond issuance in Sri Lanka and will mature in 3 years with fixed coupons. The proceeds from the bond issuance will be be used to finance eligible green projects such as solar power generation. Meanwhile, in a move to strengthen its market surveillance role, the Securities and Exchange Commission of Sri Lanka acquired a state-of-art market surveillance system from Nasdaq. This acquisition aligns with the CE's commitment to ensure a fair, transparent and efficient securities market in Sri Lanka. The CEC and Nasdaq signed the contractual agreement on the 30th of August this year in Colombo. The system will undergo extensive testing and is expected to be fully operational within 5 months of signing the agreement. In other corporate news, the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants and the Sri Lanka Association of Software and Services Companies entered into a memorandum of understanding to enhance the finance, accounting and business process management sectors in Sri Lanka. This partnership seeks to leverage the strengths of both organizations to promote the development and professional growth of individuals within these industries. Additionally, this will also emphasize skills development and training by collaboratively designing and implementing programs, workshops and seminars to upskill professionals in the finance, accounting and BPM sectors.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining and have a good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.